Another day, another story. Explore 9 surprising facts about the massive German airship and its fiery demise. Survivors of the Hindenburg disaster far outnumbered the victims. Welcome to Taboo Eminent Channel. Anyone who has seen the graphic newsreel video of the Hindenburg plunging to earth in flames may be amazed to know that of the 97 passengers and crew on board, 62 survived. The disaster's 36 deaths included 13 passengers, 22 crew members and 1 worker on the ground. Many survivors jumped out of the Zeppelin's windows and ran away as fast as they could. The Hindenburg disaster wasn't history's deadliest airship accident. Thanks to the iconic film footage and the emotional eyewitness account of radio reporter Herbert Morrison, who uttered the famous words, "Oh, the humanity," the Hindenburg disaster is the most famous airship accident in history. However, the deadliest incident occurred when the helium-filled USS Akron, a U.S. Navy airship, crashed off the coast of New Jersey in a severe storm on April 4, 1933. 73 men were killed, and only 3 survived. The 1930 crash of the British military airship R-101, which claimed 48 lives, was also deadlier. The Hindenburg disaster wasn't broadcast live on radio. Morrison was on the scene to record the arrival of the Hindenburg for WLS in Chicago, but he wasn't broadcasting live. His wrenching account would be heard in Chicago later that night, and it was broadcast nationwide the following day. His audio report was synced up with separate newsreel videos and subsequent coverage of the Hindenburg disaster. U.S. law prevented the Hindenburg from using helium instead of hydrogen, which is flammable. After the crash of the hydrogen-filled R-101, in which most of the crew died in the subsequent fire rather than the impact itself, Hindenburg designer Hugo Eckener sought to use helium, a non-flammable lifting gas. However, the United States, which had a monopoly on the world supply of helium and feared that other countries might use the gas for military purposes, banned its export, and the Hindenburg was re-engineered. After the Hindenburg disaster, American public opinion favored the export of helium to Germany for its next great Zeppelin, the LZ-130, and the law was amended to allow helium export for non-military use. After the German annexation of Austria in 1938, however, Secretary of Interior Harald Ickes refused to ink the final contract. The Hindenburg had a smoker's lounge. Despite being filled with 7 million cubic feet of highly combustible hydrogen gas, the Hindenburg featured a smoking room. Passengers were unable to bring matches and personal lighters aboard the Zeppelin, but they could buy cigarettes and Cuban cigars on board and light up in a room pressurized to prevent any hydrogen from entering. A steward admitted passengers and crew through a double-door airlock into the smoker's lounge, which had a single electric lighter, and made sure no one left with a lit cigarette or pipe. A specially designed lightweight piano was made for the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg's owners, seeking to outfit their airborne luxury liner, tasked the renowned piano-making firm of Julius Bluthner with building a special lightweight baby grand piano to meet the airship's strict weight standards. The piano, which was made mostly of aluminum alloy and covered in yellow pigskin, weighed less than 400 pounds. It was only used during the Hindenburg's first flying season, so it wasn't aboard the ill-fated voyage. The Hindenburg first took flight on a Nazi propaganda mission. Although the Hindenburg was in development before the Third Reich came to power, members of the Nazi regime viewed it as a symbol of German might. Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels ordered the Hindenburg to make its first public flight in March 1936 as part of a joint 4,100-mile aerial tour of Germany with the Graf Zeppelin to rally support for a referendum ratifying the reoccupation of the Rhineland. For 4 days, the airships blared patriotic tunes and pro-Hitler announcements from specially mounted loudspeakers, and small parachutes with propaganda leaflets and swastika flags were dropped on German cities. The referendum, approved by 98.8% of Germans, was hardly a squeaker. Later in 1936, the Hindenburg, sporting Olympic rings on its side and pulling a large Olympic flag behind it, played a starring role at the opening of the Summer Games in Berlin. The airship, which had swastikas emblazoned on its tail fins, was such a symbol of Nazi power that it was subjected to constant bomb threats, including some before its final flight, which led to suspicions of sabotage in the disaster. Dozens of letters carried aboard the Hindenburg were ultimately delivered. Zeppelins pioneered airmail service across the Atlantic, and the Hindenburg carried approximately 17,000 pieces of correspondence on its final voyage. Amazingly, 176 pieces stored in a protective container survived the crash and were postmarked 4 days after the disaster. The pieces, charred but still readable, are among the world's most valuable philatelic artifacts. Goebbels wanted to name the Hindenburg for Adolf Hitler. Eckener, no fan of the Third Reich, named the airship for the late German President Paul von Hindenburg and refused Goebbels' request to name it after Hitler. The Führer, never enthralled by the great airships in the first place, was ultimately glad that the Zeppelin that crashed in a fireball didn't bear his name. Nazi propaganda. The Hindenburg was a German passenger airship that was used as a propaganda tool by the Nazi regime. Its construction was funded by the Nazi government, and it often carried the swastika symbol on its tail, along with other Nazi insignia. Luxurious interiors. Despite being a colossal airship, the interior of the Hindenburg was surprisingly luxurious. It featured a dining room, lounge, writing room, bar, and 25 double-berth cabins, catering to the wealthy passengers. Passenger diversity. The passengers aboard the Hindenburg during its final flight were quite diverse. There were 36 passengers and 61 crew members, including a famous American radio commentator, a German opera singer, and several other individuals from various nationalities. Speed records. The Hindenburg was capable of impressive speeds, considering its size. It could travel at a maximum speed of 84 miles per hour, making transatlantic journeys faster than ocean liners of the time. Flammable coating. The outer skin of the Hindenburg was made of fabric coated with a highly flammable substance called dope, which was a mixture of cellulose nitrate and camphor. This coating significantly contributed to the rapid spread of the fire. Hydrogen gas. The Hindenburg was filled with hydrogen gas, which is highly flammable and led to the fire's intensity. Hydrogen is lighter than air, which is why it was used to provide lift, but it is also highly combustible. Survivors. Despite the catastrophic nature of the disaster, 62 out of the 97 people on board the Hindenburg survived. Quick thinking and brave actions by the crew and ground personnel helped in rescuing many passengers and crew members. Cause of the disaster. The exact cause of the Hindenburg disaster remains a subject of debate. While it is widely believed that a spark ignited the hydrogen, the source of this spark is still uncertain. Some theories suggest that a combination of factors, including weather conditions and the flammable coating, might have contributed to the disaster. Impact on airship travel. The Hindenburg disaster had a significant impact on the public's perception of airship travel. After the incident, the age of passenger airships came to an abrupt end, and airplanes became the preferred mode of long-distance travel. The disaster marked the decline of the once promising airship industry. The investigation. Delve into the detailed investigation that followed the Hindenburg disaster. Explore the various theories proposed by investigators at the time and modern researchers regarding the ignition source and the sequence of events leading to the tragic incident. Survivor stories. Interview or research the stories of the survivors. Understand their experiences, the challenges they faced during the disaster, and how it impacted their lives afterward. Many survivors' accounts provide unique insights into the chaos and heroism during the tragedy. Legacy of the disaster. Examine the long-term effects of the Hindenburg disaster on airship technology and the aviation industry as a whole. Explore how safety protocols and regulations were changed and improved in the aftermath of the incident. Additionally, discuss the psychological impact the disaster had on the public's perception of air travel. Cultural impact. Analyze the Hindenburg disaster's influence on popular culture, including movies, books, and art. Several films and novels have been inspired by this tragedy, exploring different perspectives and fictionalized accounts of the event. Eyewitness accounts. Gather and compile eyewitness accounts from people who were present during the disaster. These first-hand narratives can provide a vivid and personal understanding of the events that unfolded on that fateful day. Technical aspects. Explore the technical aspects of airship design and engineering during the 1930s. Discuss the innovations and challenges faced by engineers and designers while constructing and operating such massive airships. Highlight the advancements that were made and the limitations that still existed. Alternative scenarios. Consider exploring hypothetical scenarios. What if the disaster had been averted? How might the history of airship travel have unfolded differently? Engage in speculative storytelling to create alternative outcomes and explore the impact they could have had on aviation history. Contemporary airships. Research and discuss the revival of interest in airships in recent years. Investigate how modern technology and materials have influenced the design and safety features of contemporary airships. Compare and contrast these advancements with the technology available during the era of the Hindenburg. Each of these story angles offers a unique perspective on the Hindenburg disaster, allowing for in-depth exploration and analysis of this significant historical event. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel.